Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we will be looking at a potentially out at this point. Sorry, I am on vacation, so I am a little at loss on when things come out, but Wargaming calls it a battleship, and it certainly looks like one, but I'm not certain it is one. This is BB-65, the USS Illinois. Now, the USS Illinois actually did exist, or at least a part of it. She was built, I think, to about 20% or so, but at the time, really, the war was about over. So there were questions about what should we do with it. There were questions, or one of the options raised was that she would be completed halfway and then had a nuke dropped on her. But even that was considered too expensive, so the hull was eventually scrapped. There were some plans in the 40s and 50s about converting the remaining Iowa-class battleships into either hybrid carriers, of which we have seen some by now in the game, or into guided missile battleships, effectively large missile launch platforms. None of this ever happened, but apparently Wargaming managed to dig up yet another proposal, and that's what we're seeing here today. So in my mind, it went something like this. There were two American naval designers, let's call them Dave and George, and they went and had a couple of beers after work. And then Dave made a remark about the Alaska class and went, hey, remember those things that were almost the size of a battleship and have relatively small battleship caliber guns, but were in fact really a big cruiser, and it didn't really work out that well. And George was looking at him funny in his somewhat tipsy state and said, you know what, I think I like those things. What if, and hear me out here, what if we're making a ship that's even bigger, that's an actual battleship hull, but has even smaller guns than the Alaskas? And Dave was looking at her and saying, you know what, George, go home, you're drunk. And George went home, but he wasn't quite drunk enough. So when he reached home, he took out a piece of paper and sketched this thing. And then the next day, he made the big mistake, being completely hungover, of leaving it on the desk somewhere for his bosses to pick up. And somebody looked at it and said, well, if George thought of that, it must be good, let's build it. And that's how we ended up with the Wargaming version of the USS Illinois. Because this thing is a bit of a funny one. Anyway, let's begin. And I think I have the wrong ships selected here. Most likely, yes, I have. This is for the other video that I need to record. I'm doing it the wrong way. Anyway, obviously we want the USS Iowa here as well. But we also, somewhat conspicuously, I'm just going to finagle the Baltimore in there. And you'll see why. But first, let's begin comparing the Illinois with the Iowa. Illinois, as is typical for the premium line for American battleships, gets precise aim. Strangely enough, she gets only a precise aim 1, but at least she gets 4 charges of it, whereas the Iowa would have had the rapid reload. The Illinois is missing a couple of hit points, but other than that, looks suspiciously like an Iowa hull. She also suspiciously maneuvers like an Iowa, a tad worse actually. Here's where it gets interesting, because the Illinois has 8-inch guns. Yeah, 12 of them, but she has 8-inch guns. This is a battleship hull with a cruiser armament. She gets the same secondaries as the Iowa. She gets a noticeably better AA than the Iowa. And that's not because of the base damage on the small caliber AA. That's because that small caliber A has a 3-kilometer base range, whereas the Iowa only has 1.8. So she actually gets to put her anti-aircraft guns to use. She also has a better concealment than the Iowa. Now, the reason I'm putting the Baltimore here, and you probably figured it out by now, is that this thing, yep, she's got the Baltimore's guns. I mean, she obviously has 3 extra, but she gets to pay for that with not having a rapid reload and with a second slower base reload. Now, she does get an improved range, but it's still, 12.8 kilometers isn't massive in terms of range. There's also something else slightly odd about this ship. So I'd obviously have no statistics on it, but it felt when I was testing that the whole armor was more akin to the Tier 9 hybrid battleship than to the actual Iowa. I'm not super familiar with the Iowa, but she was taking huge amounts of damage from large caliber shells. So I think the comparison with the Alaska, despite being tongue-in-cheek, is actually not that far-fetched, to be honest. So, what are we going to do with this thing? Well, let's begin with looking how we can actually set it up. You have the American battleship typical option to get improved firing range with the advanced gun director, and that's a good thing because range is your only savior here in this thing, which means that we'll obviously also be going for the American artillery plotting room, which gives us another 4% range. And I'm actually playing with a concealment build here on this thing, because this is really more like a battle cruiser. So with Baltimore's guns, with effectively at best equal DPM, if the Baltimore uses her rapid reload, she's probably going to get more out. You sort of have to stay at range, and you can't really aggressively play with the ship easily unless you are sort of in a battle cruisery position, and you can have a single target that you can get your hands on and that you can play against. And in that case, you can get yourself into a brawl, even with cruiser caliber guns. So that's why the concealment build. Now, the camouflage, you can get the regular battleship camo, which gives you range 4%, and that's kind of what we need. The dispersion on the ship is kind of meh, which is sort of typical for those guns. But she does get the precise aim, which makes it somewhat better. And even if it's just a precise aim, it's not that terrible compared to the others. I mean, the others would be better, but it's not that terrible. And she's got a decent amount of charges on it. The alternate camo, which kind of looks a bit Soviet, if you ask me, or even German. But this one gives you max traverse speed instead of torpedo damage reduction, which I would say is probably the better choice. But if you don't want your American battleship to look like that, which I completely understand, then you probably want to better stick with this thing. Anyway, that's that. And as usual, I have played with two setups. The first one just being with a regular old captain. The second one, I've actually picked Dewey here because Dewey has an interesting skill with the precise aiming expert, because that's a combo skill with the previous fire supremacy. It gives you 2 extra precise aims and a 50% cooldown. Usually it also gives you a 50% duration reduction, which makes it kind of a less good option for battleships often. But because you can only get 1 salvo off usually with the long reloads. But with these things, I mean, you have a 9-second reload, you can probably get a couple of salvos off, and you get 6 precise aiming skills with that one. Plus, you can use the survivalist skill in slot 5 for 15% HP recovery, and trust me, you're gonna need that. Right then, so first battle, regular commander, second battle with Dewey, premium consumables, and the historical camo. And we'll see what the Super Alaska at tier 9 is capable of. The first round is a 5v5 against Izumo, Maya, Jutland, and Xianyang, domination on neighbors. Now you'd think with 12 cruiser caliber guns and with a decent range of secondaries, you don't really have to be that afraid of destroyers. And you're not wrong, but you're still in something that's about as maneuverable as an Iowa-class battleship. So you do have to be... You sort of have to play with an interesting mindset here. So you're definitely not a cruiser. You have no utility against destroyers. And you have no rapid reload, you have no radar, no sonar. You don't have the maneuverability of a cruiser. But at the same time, you're also not a battleship. Because if you are going into aggressive fights against enemy battleships, you're going to lose. Because, first of all, this thing is squishy and she is Well, just not having the Alpha Strike. You kind of, against battleships, need to rely on HE spam, unfortunately. Now, this first battle is played without APCS. The second battle is going to be played with APCS, but even with APCS at range, you're not going to be doing the greatest things here. Now, there is an Xianyang, and against that thing, the armor piercing is the right choice at this range, definitely. It's just that he's, turned lazily and nothing's happened. There's an Amagi, that's a bot, and we can probably start then switching over to the high explosive if we have nothing better. Oh, there's the Xianyang again. Actually, he's coming around, so let's slow down already. Let's see if he's coming for us. So heavy cruiser rules apply. You do need to change out of your armor piercing. And yeah, we've overpenetrated the one hit that we got on target because again the Xianyang has turned and is about to kill our bot Iowa here. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the guns around without because I was actually going back to evade torpedoes. So we're going back to and the Iowa there is going to flood out. We're going back to killing the Amagi. And against something like an Amagi at 7 kilometers, yes, armor piercing is absolutely going to be the right choice here. There is an enemy Izumo. Now, usually you wouldn't be afraid of an Izumo, now would you? Not in an Iowa. I mean, not in many things are you supposed to be afraid of an Izumo. But in this thing, you definitely don't want to get into a close range fight with an Izumo. So I'm just gonna back off here, and because if an Izumo hits you, that happens. Yeah, that was a chunky 9,000 points of damage from a single salvo. And he damage controls the single fire, so now I just have to wait until his damage control is on cooldown, and then I'm gonna go for the triple perma fire. But there comes already the return fire, and yep, that hurts, even though that mostly landed on my belt. And there's the first perma fire. So we're just backing off using long range HE spam against the battleship, even though it's just a singular Izumo. Do have to be careful here. Not to expose too much and not to take too much damage here. But we had a second permafire going. Let's see if we can get a couple more. There's another permafire, and there's another permafire. So I think the first one's about to burn out. So we are burning down the Izumo slowly. Just be aware that you have to be really careful at close range engagements, even against something like this. It's more of a cruiser playstyle against battleships, and or a battle cruiser playstyle in general. Now he's damage controlled again, so we'll just merrily keep doing that. And again a bit more defensive, but as you can see, we are actually struggling to take on an Izumo. Now I could at this point go armor piercing. I'm trying to get a couple more permafires to go because he's just damage controlled. There's another permafire. So at this range with manual aim, you can probably get into an armor piercing fight. So that's double perma, and I think that's going to get one more maybe. Yeah, that's time to switch over back to the armor piercing and start doing some damage because the HE by itself is not doing an awful lot. But we're going for manual aim, deck armor, precise aim up. And yeah, that hurts. But this is what happens when the Izumo shoots back at you. So this wasn't an easy fight. And for a tier 9 premium battleship to struggle taking on an Izumo is actually, well, I've burned through 2 heals and I'm down to 16,000 hit points. And I've been fighting the Izumo. But you can see, by the way, here what that thing does to enemy aircraft. So in that regard, it works pretty well as a support supercruiser thing as well. So it's by no means necessarily bad. You just need to know how to pick your battles. Now we are behind on points. We're only holding one of the capture circles, and there's Maya out there. The carrier, the bot carrier is out there. The Maya, the destroyer is left. That was probably the Xianyang. No, the Jutland actually. So the Rhone has got his work cut out for himself over there, and I'm going to go and take B cap. So we get some points income, and then see if I can lend some assistance. Now I'll be happy to shoot at the Maya or at the Jutland, but I don't want to get too close because I am not actually a battleship, and I don't have that much much health to spare. And both of these things have a lot of torpedoes, so Can we... okay, Maya has taken down the Rhone, so we are definitely behind on points now. And... well, but I've got the armor piercing now loaded, which is the right choice against enemy cruisers. But there comes Jutland, so there will obviously be torpedoes in the water. I'm not going to get distracted with the carrier. I want that Maya dead if I can. I'm not sure where Jutland has dropped his torpedoes, but I'm running relatively low on hit points at this point. And if Maya is coming around, then he's dead. But he will have to come around. Can I catch him? Ah, but he's on double fire, I think, from the friendly carrier. Oh no, he damaged cons to fire. Oh no, and it's triple perma from the Jutland. Yeah. So much for American. Maybe the Talon can take the Maya down, and I'll try not to die against Jutland. So much for the American fire flooding resistance. There comes the carrier. So was that from the Jutland that I took the triple permafire? Could have been the carrier, but I'm dead here. So Jutland is going to take me down. There's absolutely nothing I can do, or the carrier is... no. Tallinn gets the Maya. Unfortunately, I did not manage to survive against the Jutland because I had just taken too much damage against the Izumo. And with that, I think, unfortunately, we'll end up with a loss despite the best efforts of Tallinn. So well done, Jutland. And yeah, it's really more of a cruiser and less of a battleship. And it shows. I think it shows. I think this gave you a pretty good example of what the armor can and can't do on this thing. That said, you can do a lot of good with those guns, and definitely can do quite some damage with them. So in the second round, I went out with the Legendary Commander and the Historical Camo and the Premium Consumables, and obviously instantly went into a tier 10 game, which is only fair, against Double Monte Colombo, a Minnesota, Zao, Regolo, and Eshimakaze. So you have to play as a cruiser because each of these battleships is going to make absolute mincemeat out of you. You don't have the precision at range to make use of the 8-inch guns and to target weak spots. You can't really fight at close range that easily. You can if you can find isolated targets, but this is a honking massive battleship and it's very easy to spot. And it's very juicy to shoot at for enemy ships from long distance. So with a relatively low hit point pool and I think somewhat weak armor, but it's just the gut feeling. I don't actually have any data. We'll have to be a little careful. And again, that's where the concealment build comes in. Now I am switching to HE because I'm assuming that I'm going to be spotting enemy battleships first and not the destroyers. But given that the destroyers are not interested in actually capping D, I'm going to be the one doing that. And we have obviously enemy destroyers, an enemy destroyer over in C-Cap, so we'll put the island between myself and whatever that is, and then we'll wait to get spotted. I do have battleship support here. Maybe I can go a little bit further out and try to get into some form of flanking position where I can shoot over the island. We'll see. More of cruiser gameplay really, but I am now spotted, so whatever destroyer that is has me spotted. And oh, there's the Zao. Now for the Zao, I would have wanted the armor piercing. So let's switch that over. Of course, insta-fire from the Zao, and we have no fire in return. But with Dewey, you have so much double fire. Obviously, with Dewey, you have so much... so many rapid reloads that you have to use them. Okay, it's the Regolo. So Regolo was the one spotting at that range. I need to get back. Oh, these are Zao torpedoes. Oh, dang. I've left it too long. I didn't think he was going to launch these through the gap here, but yeah, that he has. I thought he would have launched in front of the gap. Now I have to move forward to avoid the Zao torpedoes. Now obviously I'm going to get Regolo torpedoes. And I am being shot at by whatever is that. It's a Montana or Christopher Colombo, but it's nothing good. Back to the armor piercing, where are the Regolo torpedoes? No Regolo torpedoes. So despite you being effectively a massive cruiser, you're not really on cruiser duty because you're just too big for that. And I'm going to back off a little bit. We're holding the capture circle. I want to get out of range of the Zao's guns if possible, because that thing is That thing is scary, and we can do quite some damage in return with the 8-inch armor piercing, despite having a slower reload than the Baltimore. So I think we are outside torpedo range. There come some more torpedoes, but these might have been from the Regolo. So I'm just going to stay back here, and given that I'm being HE spammed by a Zao, I'm definitely not going to be Dameconing a single fire. Yama is flooding. I'm going to use my second heal. And the battle isn't even 2 minutes or 3 minutes old, and I'm already down to 1 heal. So that just tells you how much... Yep, there come the Zao torpedoes. We're going to have to use the island there. And of course, Regolo is instantly starting to HE spam me from there within his fuel smoke, which means I have to use the island to avoid the Zao torps. And then, okay, Zao torps have run out, and then I'm going to move forward and avoiding the Regolo torps, which are probably going to be coming in there. Because there comes the fire. I do have to damage control at this point because I am running reasonably low, and I think I've managed to avoid any but one of the Regolo torpedoes. Yep, there comes the second spread, and the Regolo is now obviously moving away. Given that we don't really have any support back here, it's going to be a tricky proposition to chase that thing down. But I do want to have decap back and try to get a little bit of points income. I do have to be careful with the... Yeah, there it comes. Ow. The battleship's back there. That's a fire on the Regolo, but he'd probably Damacon that one because he's unspotted, so he doesn't have any reason not to. And I'm just going to get into the capture circle, trying to cap, and that battleship that's been firing at me has destroyer problems of its own, and the rest of my team is trying to loop around the other side. I'm obviously still spotted by the Regolo. There goes my last heal, so that's all. Yep, there he is. Dropping torpedoes in my general direction. But now I'm unspotted, so he's probably behind an island. And that means I will probably slow down and try to make myself useful against that Minnesota over there, who is being chased by a gearing and has just damage controlled. So maybe we can set a fire and finish him off. Because that gearing, okay, he did not go where I thought he was going to go. Let's see if we can finish him off from here. Just a single, like 2 fires would probably be enough to finish him off. He's reversing, so I might actually have to go forward. That's 1 fire. That's 1 perma fire. He has been healing back something, so that's double perma. That's triple perma. Okay, armor piercing was the right choice. There's Montana. I am giving broadside. Is he shooting at me? Of course he's shooting at me. Oh, that was lucky. The Regolo is out there somewhere, but Minnesota is going to burn down. Yeah, gearings burned down the Minnesota. So keeping in mind that Regolo is somewhere towards my western side, around B Cup. Yep, there he is. I am trying to keep the island between myself and him, just pretending I don't see him. Yeah, I've seen you there, Regolo. He can obviously YOLO me, but the Montana is the bigger threat, and this is with the armor-piercing cap shell. So you can actually score citadels, and just backing off, yeah, because there come the Regolo torpedoes. Yamato. Yama. Come on, we're holding 3 of the caps. Try not to die, will you? But yeah, Yamato giving full broadside to the Montana and taking a whole bunch of Regolo torpedoes is not helping the whole effort. I can't really afford to go toe-to-toe with the Monty. And there's another destroyer out there as well. I'm just trying to do as much damage as I can to that Montana. I mean, these things are relatively hard to set on fire, so I'm not even trying. And yeah, he's going for me. So hopefully Yamato can Yama finish him off? Yes, Yamato finishes him off. I survive on 2,000 hit points. And I think that got us the win. Well done, Yama. Montana did the right thing there, because he saw that Yamato had a heal coming and that he would no longer be... Yep, there's the Regolo again. Don't die to the Regolo. Just don't die. Just sail away. Just don't die. I'm helping out. So Montana did the right thing going for me, because I was definitely the target he could kill. Oh, and I just got murdered by... what was that even? Oh, this was the other Montana on the other side of the map. Yeah, there was absolutely nothing I could do about that. I was trying to save the Yama from the Regolo, but now they are 1 point ahead. No, 4 points ahead. And unless our friendly Yamato can finish something off, Smolensk, you're not going to win this by capping anymore. Especially not if you're giving broadside to a battleship. Yeah, I think that was it. And we almost did it. Unfortunately, I was so focused on helping out with the Regolo that I did not see the Montana creeping up from halfway across the map and just taking me down. And yeah, like I said, this is the problem with something that has basically slightly better than cruiser armor, the size of a battleship, and 8-inch guns. So still came up on the top of the team, surprisingly, and that is not necessarily a statement of how well I've played, but yeah, so that thing, is it a good ship? Well, it's not a bad ship. It can be a relatively consistent ship, actually. So you can, against battleships, sit back and just HE spam them and effectively do what you would do in a Baltimore. The thing is, I'd rather be in a Baltimore than in this thing. And yes, you can take something on at close range if you manage to single them out. And you have the hit points to spare in return. But then again, why would you? So I'm not sure. I'm personally not convinced. It certainly has a bit of a novelty value. But I think this is one of those ships, again, first of all being tier 9, that kind of needs a little bit of a nudge. I don't know. Give it a defensive AA. For example, Def AA 1, that would already do. To give it a bit more of a use, other than just being the back row HE spammer, because there are ships that can do that better and have more common utility than this thing. It's not in a terrible spot. It's just not particularly interesting, I think, and to play, that is. And it might need a little love or a little nudge in the future. We'll see about that. Anyway. That's it for me today. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you next time.